so I won't play with it too much. We are concluding our security seminar this afternoon, or our symposium this afternoon, with the security seminar. A nice overlap. We've done this several years now. And I'm particularly pleased to welcome and introduce our speaker, our closing speaker for this, someone I've known for several years, who has developed an amazingly good reputation in the industry, unless perhaps you're at Microsoft, in which case I'm entirely certain about that. And I asked Dan to come talk here at the symposium for a couple of reasons. One, I have never, in at least a dozen instances, attended a talk that Dan has given where I have not come away thinking that it was really insightful and he has come up with something that I had never thought of before. And in a field where you see the same things over and over again, that is incredibly refreshing. He thinks very deeply and in ways that many of us do not about the field. The second reason that I was hoping that Dan would appear and talk is he's pretty good at synthesizing things. And so having him sit through some of the session and be able to do a closing talk that tries to incorporate all of that would be wonderful, and a good close to the session. Third, it's been a while since I've seen him, so I figured this would be a good excuse.
It's fine.
So without much further ado here, I would like to introduce to you Dr. Dan Geer, the most famous pair of sideburns in information security. And he will give a provocative talk on a quant look at information security. So, Dan.
Thank you. Thank you. He has, of course, revealed that I'm not actually talking about the future. I'm actually a throwback, but that's, besides the point. What I, in a sense, and the bit about the word quant earlier, I am a numbers guy. I actually have a degree in biostatistics, and I'm the son of an accountant. So, of course, that meant I spent my youth as the slave labor of my youth was reconciling adding machine tapes, which, of course, no one does anymore. But I've been around numbers for a long time. I'm not a natural mathematician, though. Let me be clear about that. I do think to be, say, a cryptographer, for example, you do have to a degree, be wired right. And for what it's worth, I'm not wired right for that, or to be Michael Jordan either, for that matter. But I've tried to be an educated consumer of numbers. Amongst other things, I like them for the nature of truth that they can provide. Not always, of course. You can, of course, lie with statistics, and if you'd like, I will tell you how. And if you've never bought the little book, How to Lie with Statistics, I highly recommend it. It is just wonderful. But you can do that. Fred Mosteller, who was the chairman of the department where I got my degree, famously said that I'm sorry, that's not for me. Famously said that you can lie with statistics, but it's easier without them. And I think he's right about that as well. So this is a little bit of numbers, trying to guess where the numbers take us. So with that, let me ask it to start. I'm going to talk about trend analysis to a degree. The question is, why would you look at trends? Well, if you're trying to predict the future, there is an obvious question. What else do you have? You can invent it in whole, but this is not science fiction I'm trying to do. It's trying to predict the future a little bit. Speaking as a statistician, and of course, if anyone here is a statistician, you realize I am bending the truth a little bit, but I hope you'll forgive me, and it's all in a good cause, is that if you're measuring something and your measurement is not really pathologic, that even if it has regular error of some sort, that the regular error, in a sense, is self-correcting if you look at just the trends, it turns out, and don't believe necessarily the numbers. So to take a trivial example, which I mentioned earlier today, the CSI FBI study, which comes out every year, I don't honestly believe the numbers in that. But to a degree, I'm willing to believe the shape of the curve that it turns out. And for our purposes here, I think the shape of the curve is often good enough. And it's good enough in that I don't think we can do real measurement of security a lot. I don't think it's actually possible to do real measurement of security because, amongst other things, just as was said in the panel that preceded this, we don't have the language for that. We don't have the terminology for that. It's a bit of a difficulty. You know, if I say, what's a vulnerability, we will get more than one answer in the room. But if, on the other hand, I say, I'm measuring vulnerabilities in at least a stable fashion, and the shape of that curve looks like the following, perhaps we can make decisions about what should we do around vulnerabilities based on the shape of that curve that doesn't strictly depend and therefore allows us to sidestep that we don't have a strong definition, we don't have a strong mechanism of measuring it where we get in-digit accuracy and so forth. To repeat one other thing, and then I'll stop repeating things. I was once in and let me say to you that I love a technically hostile audience. So if you are of that sort, let's go to it. I enjoy that. But I was once in front of a technically hostile audience that was particularly relevant to this topic. And it was the then Chief Information Security Officer for Citicorp in New York. This was after Steve Katz, if you know who I'm speaking of. This is Steve Russell. And he was an unwilling internal promotion. He'd been in management audit and he didn't want the job, but somebody had to do it, and so forth. And in a room of about 30 people, with myself and him roughly having a dialogue with witnesses, he said, "Are you security people so stupid that you can't tell me how secure am I? Am I better off than I was this time last year? Am I spending the right amount of money? How do I compare to my peers? What risk transfer options do I have?" And of course we are that stupid. We were then, we are now. Of course I said that. But his point was well taken. And his point is the following, which is that in any other part of the banking enterprise with which he is familiar, he could answer the equivalent questions, equity trading, bond portfolios, derivative pricing, you name it. He could answer those kinds of questions 2, 3, 4, 5-digit accuracy. He could have hedges. He could have some sense of what his risk exposure was. There is a number that is calculated at every big bank every day, the value at risk number. There's whole books on this, whole books on how to calculate one number, which I know sounds surprising, but it really does exist. And the idea is that at the end, that this number is a statement about, it's just a confidence interval for those of you who know a little statistics. It's a confidence interval, typically a 99% confidence interval. On today, whatever happens, we have a 1% chance that we'll lose more than X dollars. 1% chance that we'll lose more than X dollars. And the point of this is that from a risk management point of view on the financial side of the house, you have a target for that. If it is too high, then you do not have, strictly speaking, sufficient reserves and the existence of the bank is thereby threatened. If it is too low, you're not taking enough risk and you're leaving money on the table. So there's a target range in between, and that number is calculated every day. It's a complicated simulation process usually. The last time I looked at one of these, it was 4,000 board level Linux machines running all night. The simulations are large. They are very chained together. If Mexico defaults on its bonds, what happens to the price of gas that you get from the state utility, so forth and so forth. It's a very complicated simulation, and every bank does their own. Now, where I had this moment of truth that brings me to what I'm talking about today, where I had this moment of truth was in one of the banks where I got to sit in the back of the room in an audience actually roughly this size, in which someone described at sort of all-day length how they did the value at risk calculation. This was an annual review of that particular process. And the room is full of people who contribute various parts to it. You know, the home mortgage equity, collateralization crowd over here and what have you, right? At the end of the day, the person who's standing where I am leans across the lectern and he says, "Now, you may ask yourself why this all works. The reason is that there's zero ambiguity about which one of you holds what risk." I'm in the back of the room, a light goes on. In my field, in this field, there's nothing but ambiguity about who holds what risk. And that is the big distinction. That is why we are not where finance is. Maybe you don't want to be where finance is, but I view it as a model for what can be done with risk management in a world of uncertainty. And if you've been watching lately, Goldman is beating everybody else's pants off these days in terms of the money. They're making 27% on their capital per annum. I assure you that you are probably not. I certainly am not. How are they doing that? And the answer is they believe that they can do the risk management calculation better, that they can go closer to the edge, thereby take risks that other people won't take where the real return is, and not get burned. And they believe it is purely due to their ability to do this risk management, and that's spreading actually into the way they do IT risk management, which is not what this talk is about, but it's spreading into that. For example, they are the ones who say that from this point forward, they're spending no more money on preventing bad things from happening. They're spending all their money on making fast recovery from bad things as near